There's these clips that's been going around of Burr on a podcast. Who was talking about it earlier? Pep Talk. Newcomer to this space. It was the first show today. And I wanted to show some of these clips. This is a channel, by the way, called American Redact that I think covers a lot of like the podcast comedian space. Yeah, this is the one that I was looking for. That's good. I found this at work one day at the office, and I couldn't remember the name of it. Good. Now I have it at home. But yeah, let's just check out some of these Bill Burr clips because it's always fun watching Bill Burr. I can never get enough. If you missed it earlier, I'm playing it again.
Cast out there that if you're a racist, if you're an anti-Semite, if you're a psycho-nationalist and you want a softball interview, there's podcasts out there where you can, and they will laugh at your fucking bad jokes and just give you this pass. And it's like, you know, there's a really ugly thing that's going on out there. And, you know, it's the kind of things we've already seen this.
Like, I just want to interject. Burr is notoriously doesn't like talking shit about other comedians. Period, point blank, right? He sees them all as we're all part of this community. I don't want to say names. So he's not going to say names, but this channel will.
And we've seen what it does to a nation, and it's not the way to go.
Like many people on Earth right now, Bill Burr seems to have reached his last nerve with this group of grifting podcast bros in the Rogan sphere and adjacent circles, as he just spent a good portion of this interview he did yesterday with Variety calling out the absurdity of what this whole thing has turned into. Because if you didn't know already, these podcasters Bill's referring to here have truly been playing with fire lately with the people that they platform. And it seems that they have zero clue about the actual impact these massive podcasts will have on the public for years to come. They're really just in it to make money. It is grifting at the highest level, and it seems to just be getting worse. Like, why on God's green earth are the Nelk Boys interviewing the Prime Minister of Israel?
Yo, I haven't heard of the Nelk Boys until this happened. Like, and when I did, I was like, maybe I vaguely heard of them in the past. Like, maybe once. I have no idea who they are, but the fact, dude, when I started working at this job and I had a lot of time to watch YouTube at work, I learned so much lore, retroactive, about like Gamergate and like the rise of conservatism in just gaming spaces and prank YouTubers and H3 and like all that weird stuff. And and like Game Grumps, like it's an entire Hollywood ecosystem that exists on YouTube. And I was unaware, you know, like it's so, but kids do. A lot of kids, like this, most of the audience on YouTube is young, right? Just so the fact that they were like the prime minister is insane. Netanyahu, like, and of course, Netanyahu chose this because he knew they weren't going to ask real questions and he can deliver all the propaganda. And, you know, like everyone who goes on Rogan come off looking normal-ish, right? Despite how crazy they are.
Burger King kind of sucks.
Yeah.
No,
the BK Lounge can hit.
I disagree completely.
You like Burger King over McDonald's? That's your worst take, I think.
Absolutely.
And you know it's gotten bad when Bill Burr has to finally step in and be the voice of reason, since he typically avoids these heated topics until he just can't take it anymore. And so he really doesn't hold back here. Like, he pretty much calls Joe Rogan and his whole crew a bunch of pseudo-intellectuals who think they're genius because they read stuff online, when in reality they're just dumb guys who don't realize that they're causing irreversible damage just by having these types of people on.
You know, you're talking about the billionaires and politician stuff. What do you feel, and podcasters, what do you feel about politicians and billionaires who've appeared on podcasts of your peers to try to you leveraged comedy for their own goals.
Oh, that's dude. It was before that. I remember the first time I saw a president go on the Tonight Show. I thought it was cheapening The Office. It's like they never did that. Now that everybody has a camera and blah, 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 it's just so all over the place. I just think the landscape of it has changed. All I can say is personally, I would never do it. I would never have somebody come on that's running for fucking president.
Yeah. You don't. If you're not prepared with someone else with you who knows policy, who knows, this candidate's record, I wouldn't either. You know what I mean? Someone running for office, like local council or even Congress, who's like a progressive, of course I would have them on. Or a conservative, I would have them on. But for president, without at least, and if I had someone from Congress on, I would be texting people that I know policy and saying, oh my God, I'm having this person on my podcast. Can you help me? Like, I would not be confident that I could just wing it.
With my intellect, I'm not going to sit there and be like, so like, what are your, what's your foreign policy? Like I would be like within 3 minutes, dude, what was your favorite Super Bowl? And then people be like watching it going, I like that Super Bowl too. I'm going to vote for this guy. It's just like, it's just so far beyond my wheelhouse. Like I am just way beyond. Like this.
Then Burr really starts to go in on who people assume are Joe Rogan and Andrew Schultz.
Now, again, I've mentioned this before. I've met Andrew Schultz. I used to be friends. Still am kind of technically. You know how you're friends with people, but you haven't talked to them in many years. And you're still friends on like Instagram or Facebook or whatever. Like that's how I am with his brother. So it's weird. Like I actually did see his brother last year or the year before because I was like, oh my God, we haven't seen each other in a long time. Let's have lunch. And he was telling me at Andrew's wedding, Rogan was there with some of the podcast people.
Criticizing them for thinking there's some form of higher intellect, like they've ascended beyond the normal working class civilian, just because they can regurgitate whatever they read online that day in a somewhat coherent way. And Bill Burr explains here that this is all ego-driven, as they desperately want to appear like someone who's more valuable than who they really are. D-tier stand-up comedians at best, who have to get onto their tippy toes just to reach for the low.
And that's what I mean, dude. Like they are not A tier. And look, that has to do with the industry. That has to do with, likability, workability, working with others, dude. Patrice O'Neal, RIP, who Bill Burr, by the way, every single year does a benefit show for to raise money for Patrice's family because Patrice was the breadwinner. Patrice, and has done it since he died. I've been twice. It's great. These comics, like Patrice was the reason I bring up Patrice is that he's an amazing comedian. If you haven't watched Elephant in the Room, do yourself a favor and watch it. Trigger warning, obviously. It's from the mid 2000s, and he was edgy then. But good politics ultimately. And that's where Burr got a lot of his, is being on set of the Chappelle Show and meeting Donnell Rollins and Charlie Murphy and Patrice. Well, actually, he knew Patrice just from comedy earlier. But I listened to his podcast for a long time. I know a lot about his life. It's weird. Listening to podcasts or watching YouTube, you just by osmosis learn a lot about these people's lives to the point where you develop parasocial is a whole other thing. Anyways, Patrice was notoriously not good working with like executives and shit. Like he had NBC pilot, I think, that was gonna go, but he had problems with the executives and notes and shit and working with them. And that happens. So some of the A-tier comedians, like A-tier, like Amy Schumer's A-tier. You know what I mean? Is she great? There's others that are better. She had moments, you know, but there are others that are better. Some of the A-tier just comes from like Chris is just being able to work with studio people. However, Joe Rogan and Joe Rogan, I think, had an in with studio people because he was on news radio in the 90s, a sitcom. So maybe that's where he still has some kind of juice, but his rise, it was just podcasting, man. He was just early to it. And just, yeah, anyway.
Lowest hanging fruit. But as Bill Burr put,
and again, Tony Hinchcliffe, like some of these other guys, they're touring comedians. They're successful stand-up comedians. You know, they're not Bill Burr level is like you're getting into acting. You're getting, you know, he's on Broadway now. Like that's someone like Bill Burr's an example of an A-tier comedian who deserves to be there. Not only because, yeah, he can work with studio executives, but also he's that good. You know what I mean?
At the end of the day, they're just dumb jocks who would,
like, for example, on Legion of Skanks podcast, there's a comedian, Big J Okerson, who I think is an A-tier comedian, but is kind of being held back by wanting to hang out with his friends who aren't. And his friends being like Dave Smith and Louis J. Gomez, both of whom are funny in their own right to an extent, but just not as good as Big J. Anyways.
only sounds smart in a sports bar.
There's a difference between the people
that Ethan Burr was in Breaking Bad, and the story he tells on his podcast of how he got that was he saw the first episode. He was like, this show's coming out with the dad from Malcolm in the Middle. How's this going to work? And he saw the first episode and was like, yo, this is going to be fucking dope. And he told his manager, I don't care if it's a bit part. I don't care if I don't have any lines. I want to be on this show at some point. And had worked to get on that show, and eventually was. It was a fun side character from what I remember. I stopped like halfway through the last season because it got too sad for me. I wasn't watching it when it was on. I binged it on Netflix one year, like 10 years ago. And yeah, anyways.
Sounds smart in a sports bar.
Yeah, so like basically the point Burr is about to make is just because you read something written by a smart person doesn't make you also a smart person.
There's a difference between the people that read and the people that are the subject of what you're reading. You know what I mean? There's people that like discover shit and figure shit out, and then there's the people that read it. Like the amount of people that can explain the theory of relativity. That's probably not a lot of people, but they can do it. But then there's this ego thing that because now I can explain it like I'm somehow Einstein adjacent. It's like, no, you're not. You just read some smart shit.
Yeah.
That was a bit I used to do in my act where it's just like, there's nothing worse than when a dumb person reads because now they think they're smart. It's just like, no, you're just a dumb guy that knows a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Like intellect to me is how you process information. It's not just reading a bunch of smart shit, putting in your head and then puking it out at people and be like, you know, in 1492, that's not smart. You're torturing people.
Yeah.
So it's more like how you put stuff together. And like somebody said to me one time, I go, Bill, you know, you're a really smart guy. And I go, yeah, in a sports bar. You put me in a sports bar and you want me to talk about 70s and 80s sports. I am scoring very high.
Yeah.
All right. You put me in like that form to have to interview somebody that is going to run for president, and then as the sports bar guy, you're going to see like, yeah, this guy did go to summer school a lot. So,
and Bill saying this is truly satisfying, as Joe Rogan and his offspring have been impersonating philosophers for
right. So that's enough of Burr.